Perfect, thank you. Okay, so welcome to the Klamath Water Quality Improvement Grant Program webinar. And before we jump in, I think we're going to go ahead and start and do a round of introductions. And so my name is Teresa DeBartoleben. I'm the Drought Program Specialist at OWEB, and I'll pass it over to Renee.
Good morning, everyone. Renee Davis, Acquisitions and Special Programs Manager at OWEB. And I'll take it to Tyler next.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Tyler Dearman. I am the Klamath Basin Specialist for Oregon DEQ and serve as the chair of the steering committee for this funding. And I'll pass it over to Greg.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Cianella. I am one of OWEB's regional grant program coordinators. I am based in Bend. I service Klamath County primarily in the open solicitation program, but I'm going to be assisting the IM11 offering, and I will pass it over to Heidi.
Good morning, everybody. Heidi Hartman, work for OWEB. I am the Federal Program Specialist, and I'll be taking notes today.
Hey, and Nicole, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Bettinardi. I am the OWEB's executive assistant, and I am running the show in the background.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, so give me a second here while I get all set up. Okay, I think everybody can see my screen now. Okay, I see some heads bopping up and down. Okay, so before we jump in, a few logistical things. So we will go through the PowerPoint together, and at the end we'll have a Q&A session where you'll be able to ask questions live during that session. And then if you have any questions during the PowerPoint itself, feel free to use the chat and we'll address those during the Q&A session. And then one thing I do want to know, if you do have project-specific questions, it might be easier, instead of asking those during the Q&A session, is to set up a meeting with me later on to go over any specifics for the project that you may be applying for. Okay, so for the history here, so in 2010, the original Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement, which was executed in February 2010, intended there to be implementation of interim measure 11, and it was mostly for water quality improvement projects. And over the next several years, there was a list of water quality improvement projects that were developed. And then in 2018, the settlement agreement that was amended, it was included a list of water quality improvement projects that were developed specifically by the Interim Measure Implementation Committee. In 2020, following the Klamath River Renewal Corporation's acceptance of the surrender order from FERC, PacifiCorp provided funded specifically for the implementation of the list of water quality improvement projects that were developed by the Interim Measure Implementation Committee, also known as the IMIC. And then in 2023, an intergovernmental agreement signed between DEQ and OWEB was, there's a steering committee that was formed out of that, and that steering committee was mostly comprised of members of the IMIC. And the purpose of this agreement is to govern the operations of the steering committee as specified in the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement. The steering committee is tasked with oversight of implementation of the projects to improve water quality in the Klamath River. And so for history, because I'm fairly new to this program, I just want to take a moment to see if any of my counterparts had any additional historic components that they wanted to add to this slide.
Nothing for me, Teresa.
Great, thank you. Okay, hearing none. Okay, so we have about $6.4 million available for this fund, or for this program. And depending upon how this solicitation goes, if we need to do additional solicitations, we'll do those annually. And we also consult with the steering committee to ensure that they want to continue to do funding solicitations on an annual basis, but the tentative plan right now is to do them to do them annually until all the funding is allocated for the program. The purpose of the program is to address water quality improvements in the Klamath River. The program emphasis is mostly just nutrient reduction projects that have a direct water quality benefit to the Klamath River. Priority will be given to projects upstream of the Klamath Lake, but projects below the Klamath Lake and the Lost River Basin are eligible. And really for applicants, what you is really up to the applicant to ensure that you're making strong connection to water quality improvements through the application. And then those projects that have a direct impact to the Klamath River will be given priority. Okay, eligible applicants for this program, it's typical with our OWEB applicant pool is our eligible applicants on the left side, and this is our typical process. And so for ineligible applicants, it's a little bit different for this program, is that any member or organization represented on the steering committee is not allowed to be an applicant. But with one exception is that the tribes are on the steering committee and are members, but they are also eligible applicants. Okay, there are two types of grant offerings under this program. There's the restoration and then technical assistance grant type offerings. The four main categories, which are listed here, are the natural wetlands restoration, the diffuse source treatment wetlands, riparian fencing and grazing management, and then on-farm irrigation efficiency and water management. And then we have the other program, which is any project that you feel has a direct connection to improved water quality, then that could fall under that category. But of note, under the on-farm irrigation efficiency and water management, the category, so ineligible activities do include the large-scale irrigation modernization, and that includes canal piping and associated infrastructure, canal lighting, and off-farm piping of water conveyance systems. And then we are going to allow on-farm piping of ditches. And again, it's up to the applicant to make that connection that there's a water quality benefit there. There will be a two-step process. First is the pre-proposals, and then we'll be accepting full proposals. In the first step, OWEB will accept project pre-proposals. The pre-proposals will be limited to a 2-page narrative, and then associated attachments will be required. And you'll be able to find the document on our website. If you go to our website and click on the Klamath Water Quality Program, you'll see that there will be a proposal on there that you'll need to fill out, and then you can email directly to me. The steering committee will review these proposals, and I have a slide later on that will go through the process for how we will go through the pre-proposal and then the full proposal applications. And then based on the steering committee's recommendation, OWEB will initiate a second step in the process by inviting applicants to submit a full proposal. So this is the process that we're going to follow in order to fund the projects. So we'll accept the pre-proposals. We'll have a technical review meeting, and that review meeting will be comprised of the steering committee. And so the steering committee will review the pre-proposals and make a recommendation to staff of which applicants they want to invite to submit a full proposal. And then that next step will be the application, and then we'll have another technical review team for the full proposal process. And then the steering committee will also make recommendations to OWEB staff to see which projects they want to fund or do not fund. And depending upon how many grant application types we get in, we may need to develop a funding line, but we really won't know that until we get further through the process to see how much applications came in and for what was the total amount that they came in for. And then these grants are director awarded, and so OWEB director will make a funding decision. Okay, so this is our bubble diagram. And before I jump in here, I wanted to have you all take a look on the left-hand side in the gray box. And so under the restoration evaluation criteria, We do want to make sure that you're demonstrating the clear need for the project and how the proposed activities will lead to water quality benefits. And then you also ultimately want to show in your application that you're reducing nutrient inputs into the Klamath River. And so through your application, these are the five evaluation criteria bubbles that you do want to hit on throughout your application. And those include technical soundness, watershed context, capacity of the applicant, and the cost effectiveness, and then proposal clarity. And so there's a few items that I did want to call out for you all to see under like watershed context. You really want to make sure that you're demonstrating a linkage with existing Klamath Basin plans, as well as noting that the projects located upstream of the Klamath Lake will be given priority. And you really want to make sure that you're demonstrating the nutrient input reduction, what the benefit is to the Klamath River. And so that's like a few things that is a little bit different than our typical restoration grant program, is that these are more specific for the Klamath region. And then as well as capacity of the applicant, just demonstrating good coordination among local partners and community members. Is it cost effective? And then for proposal clarity, is your project ready to be implemented? And so these are the things that you really want to hit on throughout your application. And then, hitting on all five of those components is really going to be the sweet spot and making your application more likely to be funded. And I want to pause here to see if anybody else has any comments on the evaluation criteria slide. Okay, hearing none. So I'm going to switch over to technical assistance. Again, directing your eyes up to the left corner is for the evaluation criteria specifically for this grant program, is you want to make sure that your project designs or engineering materials lead directly to site-specific water quality restoration projects within the specified time frame. Again, under this evaluation criteria for technical assistance, there's 4 bubbles in this for the technical assistance. And so there's technical soundness, capacity of the applicant, cost effectiveness, and proposal clarity. Again, so for technical soundness, again, you want to make sure that you're addressing limiting water quality factors that exist in Klamath Basin plans, as well as describing alternative analysis that demonstrates a range of options that were considered. And so these, again, are specific for the Klamath Water Quality Improvement Program, also IM11. And so hitting on these 4 spots is really what you want to do to try to, make sure that you can eventually come back to OWEB and apply for a future restoration grant program or grant. Reporting requirements is our typical OWEB process. You'll have progress reporting throughout your grant agreement, as well as a project completion report at the end. And in addition, you also have post-implementation status reporting, and that, typically is, about 1 to 2 or 3 years post-project that you'll be submitting a status report on. So I saved the timeline for the end, and that was mostly to kind of keep it fresh in your mind. So as of now, we have our pre-proposals that are open, and those are due August 16th. Again, you want to email those directly to myself, and I have my email at the end of this PowerPoint, or you can also find it on our website. We will have the pre-proposal review meeting with the steering committee on September 19th. Following that, you will receive an email if your application was invited to submit for a full proposal on October 3rd. And then between October 3rd and November 14th, when full proposals are due, we'll try to conduct some site visits, depending upon how many grant applications that we do get in. We're still really not sure what may come through the door. And so we'll have our full proposal review team meeting on December 12th. And then probably a few weeks later, you'll be notified whether or not your grant was funded, and then award will be given to the applicants. Okay, so that was short and sweet. And so now I think we have some time for questions and answers. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. Okay. So Heidi, has there been any Q&A questions so far?
Not in the Q&A, no.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and Heidi's going to be able to unmute you and then you'll be able to ask any questions that you may have. Okay, it's Monday morning. It's a little quiet. Um, maybe I hopefully addressed all of your questions. If you don't have any or
Teresa,
anything.
Micah raised his hand. I'm gonna
Oh,
unmute
okay,
Micah.
good.
Go ahead, Micah.
Unmute. Good morning. I'll start us off here. Thank you. Maybe just we could warm up with some of the basic questions. I'm just trying to review this Klamath Water Quality Improvements Grant Program Overview Guide, and I think it said we submit the narrative via email. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and I do have it here, and that's to you, Teresa, directly.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, excellent.
I will. Let's see.
And I'd seen mention also of a recommendation to have that submitted at least 24 hours in advance of the deadline so that the system might be able to check for any errors. Is that the case, or is that for the final proposal?
Yeah, that's for the final proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want to typically submit those about 24 hours in advance just in case anything happens, and we've seen it happen. And so just to give yourself a little bit of buffer there, well, it helps tremendously. But just for the pre-proposals, you don't need to submit them 24 hours in advance.
Okay. If we were to submit them, with enough time, do they get reviewed at all up until the deadline, or do all applications get held until that deadline in case there were any, big glaring mistakes or missing components?
Yeah, so we will I will hold them all until the end date, and I will, compile them all at once and then have them sent out to the steering committee at one time.
Okay,
Mhm.
awesome. Thanks. Yeah, that covers, I guess, just some of the basics of the process. Did anybody else have their hand raised, or shall I keep going?
I would say go ahead and keep going. And then when you're done, Micah, we've got a question from Alex that we'll get to after that.
Okay. Yeah, one more, just a little specific question. And it's from that guide. I'd seen mention of, excuse me. Yeah, I'll let the other question go. And then let me kind of, get my specific thoughts together on this, and then I'll re-enter the queue.
Okay, thanks, Micah.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate your questions. From Alex Sharp at the Klamath Soil and Water Conservation District, the question is, if a landowner has several different types of projects going on to one property, does each project need a separate pre-proposal?
It's a good question. So it's one property. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think it could all come in under one application would be my guess. But Renee, I don't know if you unmuted, so maybe you have.
I would agree with the distinction of Alex if you're proposing both a technical assistance body of work and what would fall into more of a restoration body of work, that likely will need to be two applications because we evaluate those against separate evaluation criteria between TA and restoration. But if it's a collection of restoration actions like fencing and replanting as an example, maybe some on-farm efficiency projects that can be bundled in a single restoration application.
Go ahead, Micah.
Great, thank you. And if this question is too project specific, let me know and I can do a follow-up. But our project would fall into the natural wetlands restoration category. And I was noticing along with, the reducing nutrients, there's mention here, it says wetlands restoration also could provide habitat for the endangered short-nosed and lost river suckers if located in Upper Klamath Lake. And so this would also be a component of our project. And so I'm just wondering, how much emphasis we should maybe place on each in the narrative, or I guess how much of a priority that habitat restoration factors in or weighs into the evaluation.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, I think the biggest thing is making the connection to improved water quality and nutrient reduction, and how you make that strong connection is really up to you to describe that throughout your application. And I don't know, I feel like I'm missing a portion of, and is your question more in regards to the wetland project itself?
Well, yeah, so my question is understanding what you just said, that the priority is for water quality enhancement, right? But then I also saw it mentioned in here that wetland restoration also could provide habitat for the endangered short-nosed. So we're doing both. So I'm just wondering how much I guess emphasis or value could be given to the habitat restoration part, or is that just a really kind of a small piece of what might be evaluated?
I mean, I think describing the whole picture is really important when you're writing your application. So I would definitely say to include it. And I see that Renee unmuted as well. And so do you want to chime in here?
Teresa, you're spot on with your comment. I think certainly connecting the dots. Teresa mentioned some of the existing plans as an example in terms of priority areas and actions, and those certainly connect to water quality considerations, habitat considerations for aquatic species. So I think just further connecting the dots to some of those co-benefits will be nothing but helpful, but squarely grounding in the water quality benefit that's anticipated from the project.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So we have a question from Kelly Delpit of the Sustainable Northwest in the Q&A, and she was wondering if the funds are not all expended in this round of applications, will another round become available in 2025?
Thanks, Kelly. Yes. So right now the tentative plan is to do annual solicitations, but we still need to run that through the steering committee. And so I'm not sure when our next steering committee is, but that will be on our list to ask them. And so my guess it'll probably be shortly after we go through this round of funding projects. Okay. Well, not hearing anything else or seeing any other questions come in. As always, please feel free to reach out. I will, I'm trying to figure out how to put my email into the Q&A, but it doesn't look like I have access to it. But I think most of you have my email, and I'll be able to pull your guys' contact information from the Zoom, and I can also send you a direct email because my last name is pretty hard to type out. So I fully understand that. I will be sure to just follow up with my email so you guys have a direct contact, so you don't have to search for it, but you can also find it on our website. Okay, well, thank you all for joining, and I appreciate it. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for your time.